2,000 years ago, St. Paul had to risk his life sailing across the Mediterranean just to reach a few hundred people. Today, anyone with a phone and internet connection can reach tens of thousands of people instantly. On the one hand, this is an incredible development, giving rise to digital evangelists, people who can share the gospel in every language from many perspectives, personalizing the message to reveal the lived experience of the gospel today. On the other hand, this is a dangerous development, giving rise to Catholic celebrities to use the gospel for clout, prosperity, and personal agendas, making it more about them than the gospel they preach. For many, the difference between the two is something you just know when you see, but what exactly separates the two? And for those seeking to be digital evangelists, how do we guard ourselves against the temptations of celebrity status? As someone who has been at this for more than 13 years, I have seen and admittedly made my fair share of mistakes, which is how I came up with this list of the 7 deadly social media sins of Catholic celebrities and the 7 corresponding virtues of digital evangelists. Number 1, performative Catholicism. There is nothing wrong with sharing your personal life online. In fact, I think talking about the intimate aspects of faith, prayer, fasting, almsgiving, relationships, family life, doubts, all of these things can be really helpful ways to teach about the faith and give inspiration to those facing the same situations. But just remember what Jesus said about the Pharisees and what we read each Ash Wednesday. Do not perform these things to get praise from others. Too often, social media influencers present to the world a caricature of their life that is staged and inauthentic solely for the sake of appearances. Their feed shows one thing while their intimate life is completely different. This cannot be the case for evangelists. Any presentation that is geared towards boosting your appeal or gaining influence must be avoided. Anything that is staged or presents an image of you that doesn't accurately reflect the real, lived experience of Christianity is going to be ultimately detrimental to others. If you want to share a bit about your prayer or relationships for the sake of encouraging others, that can be fine, but it must start with an authentic experience and be shared humbly, without gloss, and only in part. We share only a bit of what we do for the benefit of others. We don't do things so that they can be shared for our benefit. Number 2, divisive language. Being prophetic is necessary as a Christian. We shouldn't be afraid to speak the truth even if it means being unpopular or losing subscribers. Ironically, the problem we face with social media is actually the opposite, which is that the internet, unfortunately, rewards extreme language with more subscribers. There's an all too tempting option for creators, as we have all witnessed, to grow through division, to gain popularity by condemning others. Being prophetic against evil is not the same as condemning people who do evil. Jesus came not for the righteous, but for the sinners. He told us to love our enemies. As easy as it is to gain a following by drawing a line in the sand, building our entire persona about correcting others, criticizing others, condemning others, this is not the fruit that Jesus desires. As Christians and as evangelists, we are a people for all people. Our aim is not to defeat our enemies, but to convert their hearts. As Catholics, we are the universal church, which has a home for everyone. Our words must speak to all people, and they must seek to unite. If you look at your feed and all you see are criticisms, rebuttals, or condemnations, especially of other Christians, it might be worth asking the question, am I spreading the gospel, or am I spreading myself? In these cases, we might need to reconsider the community we're forming because it's not the Church of Jesus Christ. Number 3, the outrage machine. Similar to the last point, it's important to note that anger is not, in itself, a sin. Jesus had anger towards those who abuse the poor. God's righteous anger flared up repeatedly against injustice. There are many things in our world that we should be rightly angry about. But does our anger consume us? Does it motivate all that we do? Most importantly, is the only thing we offer our followers outrage, or is there ever hope mixed in? Again, unfortunately, outrage is what sells. It's what mobilizes people more than love, and so if all we want to be is a celebrity, focus on angering people. Look for what's wrong with the world and shout about it constantly. Paint a picture of fear, despair, and hopelessness. Remind people constantly that the world is going to hell in a handbasket. As we've seen from cable news and politics, people will flock to you. Just remember, Jesus came to bring hope, not fear. There are real problems in our world, but there is nothing more joyful than our salvation, nothing that can triumph over the goodness of the cross. Even when we speak of the world's ills, we must give people a reason for hope. Even when things look bleak, it is imperative that we live with the confidence that God is in control. Number 4, superficial goals. Success is difficult to measure in evangelism. We cannot know the heart and we cannot see the whole picture, and so knowing that we are making a difference can sometimes be a challenge to perceive. This should not deter us. What should deter us are goals that have nothing to do with evangelism, measures of success that are selfishly motivated. In this world, there are any number of foolish goals. Likes, subscribers, positive comments, endorsement deals, book sales, speaking engagements, money, general popularity. These are the goals of the world, and these are the goals that will inevitably shift our content away from true evangelism. When we are focused on popularity or money, it is only natural that we will create content that appeals more to the masses than to the people who need to hear our message. It is only natural to shy away from difficult topics, remaining safe and marketable. Jesus was not safe, and he was not marketable. He didn't count his followers, and he didn't worry whether everyone liked him. His goal was the salvation of souls, and he was willing to endure even death to achieve that. As digital evangelists, our only goal must be to change hearts. The highest praise we can receive is that someone entered OCIA because of something we said, that they turned away from evil because of our video. Any content that doesn't seek that end, and that end alone, is probably a bad goal. If you seek superficial goals, you will achieve superficial ends. Number 5. Purely ephemeral content. Now, my last point notwithstanding, I do think that merit can be found even in folly. As a Franciscan, making people laugh, providing entertainment, bringing a moment of joy to the world, even if it doesn't explicitly progress the work of the gospel, can be good things, if these things ultimately point to something deeper. Being silly can help build trust and break down fear. Being foolish can attract an audience not yet ready for the proclamation of the gospel, preparing them for a deeper message later. But if all we create is folly, all we present of ourselves is foolishness, what will this ultimately do to the gospel? I see Christian creators on Instagram who seem focused solely on the least important things, who devote their ministry to things that are passing away, who never challenge, connect, invite, or inspire. All they do is pacify. Digital evangelists always have a higher goal. They're always pointing to something beyond themselves. They may use shiny objects to attract attention, but it is never about the shiny object itself. And so we can ask ourselves, when the kingdom comes and the fading world passes away, how much of our feed will remain? Number 6, amplify the majority voice only. Sometimes things are popular because they're right. There's a reason I believe that Christianity is the world's largest religion, and there's no need to promote smaller religions simply because they're smaller. Error does not need a voice. But on the other hand, just because something is popular doesn't mean that it's right. Our world has shown more than a few times that things can become popular for the worst of reasons, and those who speak truth can be overlooked and even oppressed. As Christians, we must always remember that Jesus came to the prostitutes and tax collectors, not the kings and religious leaders. He listened to the downtrodden, defended the oppressed, and dined with the undesirables. He did this because they had just as much worth as any human being, but the world refused to see them. Pope Francis has reminded us repeatedly that we must be among the periphery, that we must listen to the quieted voices, that we must speak for the downtrodden. And so we should ask ourselves, do we seek to associate only with the popular, to raise the voice of those who are already talking the loudest? Or do we hear the poor and speak for the oppressed? The celebrity speaks to whatever is popular. The evangelist speaks to what is true. And finally, number 7. Overconfidence. As Christians, there are things we know to be true, and we should not be afraid to share them. The world will not be convinced of what we have to say if we are not convinced ourselves. But the world will also not be convinced of what we have to say if we speak with confidence things that are wrong, if we refuse to admit mistakes, if we confuse dogmatic statements with our own opinions. Humility is an undervalued virtue, especially among teachers. We got into this work because we know something, because we have something to teach other people, but it's important that we be honest with our limitations. Not only are we collectively limited in what can be known by human reason, we are personally limited by our own biases, gaps in knowledge, mistakes, and sins. One of the most dangerous examples I see of this on social media is someone criticizing a creator for something they feel is vague or confusing. Rather than assume the best, rather than give them the benefit of the doubt to a fellow Christian, they claim to know what the other meant and why they said it, and condemn them for it. How is it that someone can be confusing and yet you know exactly what they meant enough to condemn them? It is okay to say that we don't know something. It's okay to avoid a topic that we're not confident about. It's okay to ask questions when we are confused, and it is okay to say that we have made a mistake and to ask for help. In my 13 years of digital evangelism, I can't say that I've committed all of these social media sins, but I know for sure that I fall into this one. I strive to be the best that I can for people and do not believe that I am motivated by anything other than a desire to spread the gospel. But I have confidently stated things I later found out to be wrong. I have been reticent to admit fault. I have ignored criticism because I didn't want to admit that there could be a problem with something I said. This is a problem, and one that I would like to work on in the future. Some of you will notice that in my 2-month break, I removed 4 or 5 videos that I had previously defended. Even if every criticism wasn't valid about it, some certainly had merit, and I do not want to benefit from videos with even a single flaw. My work isn't about views or subscribers, and it isn't about my own public image. It's about providing resources to those seeking the truth. My hope in sharing this video, particularly in admitting this last fault, is to show that the question of evangelist versus celebrity is not a binary one, that there aren't necessarily good guys versus bad guys, but that all of us, even with the best of intentions, can fall to one or more temptations. It does not help anyone to label a creator wholly good or completely bad, beyond reproach or without merit. Rather, it should be our goal to hold every creator to the highest standard. Because really, it takes only one deadly sin to ruin a whole soul, right? We may avoid 6 out of 7 of these sins, mostly doing a good job, but that doesn't free us from blame, and it doesn't give us a pass on the last one. I encourage every creator and really every viewer to take seriously this list, to soberly look at oneself, and to demand, with patience and kindness, only the best from those who proclaim the word of God. There is too much at stake to be just good enough.